This is Family Electric Ghost. We're on the air with Dr. Ellyn Hilliard-McLeod for the first time. Welcome to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing this afternoon?
Thank you. I'm doing great. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you.
Well, we love to talk to people live from around the world. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick at the moment. And before we get to your heartiest story, we always ask a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I what's motivated me lately to at least write this book, which actually came out just 2 days ago. It's called It Takes More Than Carrot Juice. And I had an experience with a psychic, surprisingly enough, who kind of channeled my parents who've passed. And they were saying, you got to get this book out. I'd written it about 8 years ago. I'm a holistic nutritionist. And I have my own health crisis journey when I was about 28 years old and had a Crohn's disease diagnosis and healed it through nutrition. But as I started to look at my own health, other people started becoming attracted to my message. And I primarily worked with cancer patients in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. So I've been working in that field for quite a while.
That's interesting to go into that because I'm a cancer survivor myself. I had a level 3 sarcoma when I was like 27. I had full maximum radiation dose and a couple surgeries. And I discovered like I needed to reduce the impact of any carcinogen in my life. So I got water filters on my house on the main thing and started like eating organic food and looking at a lot of additives, and you looked into the volatile organic compounds. I just started like being interested in like what causes potential cancer and what could I do to mitigate it going forward.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Because you were right around the same time period in your life as I had my health crisis. I was 28. And it's an interesting thing when you wake up to what's going on. And I would say working with cancer patients the way that I have, that it's really beyond the physical remedies. There's a mindset. So when I say it's an identity beyond illness, it's looking at what's been going on in your life that have been little mini red lights, little triggers that have pointed to things in your life that you need to heal. And they could be things like what you were talking about. They could be, the water you're drinking or the food you're eating. But what I find is that that's just a frequency, a set of frequencies and energy that's flowing through your body, and that there are other things maybe more powerful than that, like your thoughts or the blocks to your heart and relationships that aren't healed. So that's really what my message is now.
That's interesting. It is a holistic point of view. I lived in like Japan for a couple of years, and what I felt when I was in Japan was like there was a lot of mysticism with like Shintoism, but also there was a lot of understanding of connectedness to like nature, into the world. And when I was there, people, there was more the collective concepts of like, I'm not just gonna do something because I feel like doing it. I'm gonna consider like other people. 'Cause when I was there during flu season, and all these people were wearing masks on the subway, and they just wore them, and they did it because they didn't want to infect like their neighbor, and they just didn't have to be told to do it. They just did it, and so there was this different type of mindset of maybe you should do more than what you just want to do for yourself. You should think about other people.
Interesting. Well, and I would even challenge that thought and say that those other people are mirrors to you. So when someone does something to you, like you, or even if you think a virus or a germ did something to you, I would encourage my clients to really look at what is the message behind it. Because as a teacher, and I've been teaching in Waldorf schools for, close to 30 years, I'll be taking a 6th grade class next year. I've taken 2 years off. But when a virus or a flu goes through the school, only a certain percentage of us get sick. And so it's really about what's going on with the immune system. And like I said, it's beyond the guess, let's say. It's beyond the targeting what's going on outside and looking at what's going on inside. What's the frequency in here? How is your immune system? What's your happiness quotient? All of those things really play into protecting you from anything outside yourself that is supposedly making you ill.
Yeah, I think you have to have like a multiple pillars to the human.
Multiple pillars.
Yeah, because it's like
Absolutely.
your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, the energy. So there are things that, I'm part Cherokee, and there's a lot of mysticism within indigenous cultures, but there's this understanding of like the universe, and then the internal universe, right? And then the external universe, and it's
Mhm.
connected. And if you're not thinking positive, if you're not being like, it's like karma too, because I was in like, I practice Nichiren Daishonin, like Buddhism, and there's this idea like karma. And if you have this inner, self, like you can control a lot of what happens through positive thinking, through affirmations. And that's all inside. That's all your mind and your soul and your spirit and your body. If you align those, then you build up like a defense or
Yeah.
support. And if you don't build that up, if you don't believe in that, you think, oh, that's like foo foo. Then everything's external. Everything's like, oh, the other did this, the external did that, and there's no internal responsibility at all.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would say that even around the message of positive thinking, a lot of people, especially those I work with, um, think of themselves as not being able to jump that hurdle. How can I think positively? Everything is happening to me. This is happening to me. My finances are terrible. My marriage is terrible. So they always think of things outside, and they can't change that inner thought to think positively. So what I try to encourage is a couple of different things. One is we do a lot of group work, a lot of support group work, so that you can surround yourself with people that are thinking more creatively in terms of their health. But then also doing a lot of exercises. You mentioned, Japan. There's a lot you can do with meditation where you're just looking at the thoughts. You don't have to change them. You just need to just let them drift by. And then as they drift by, that space between them, grab onto it and change that space. Because as someone might say, who has that Buddhist perspective, is that it's the space between the thoughts that has the love frequency in it. And that's the healing energy. So we try to remove those obstacles.
That's interesting because as a musician, what we also know is the space between the notes mean a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will fill up the space and they'll overdo it. They'll create so many layers. And what I try to tell a lot of musicians is like, if you give more space between the notes, then you're more vulnerable because then you're being more honest. Because when you layer, you're kind of hiding things. You're like overdoing it to kind of give you this confidence that you can't be authentic. And if you're authentic, then sometimes there might be a happy accident. You might make a mistake. You might have a little microtonal error. And I think like you learn from those things. And in fact, in art, the mistakes are what actually usually art is the beauty to the piece. That not being perfect timing is actually part of the song.
Mhm.
That not
Yeah,
being perfect
actually,
tone is part of the song.
and writing is the same way. So as an author and using that as a creative art, to say too much can really put the reader into a state of confusion. Just giving enough information, but making it concise but descriptive so that the reader can use their imagination is so much more important than putting way too much in the story. It's in fact, as a Waldorf teacher, we always say that the reason that we ask the children not to go see the Disney films is so that there isn't this preconceived idea of who Snow White is or who Cinderella is or who Aladdin is. It's so that they can use their own imagination and make it theirs. So when you hear a story, you can actually create imagination around it. But when you're seeing it on the screen, you've decided Aladdin's got dark hair, Snow White has dark hair, Cinderella is blonde, and they've got these characteristics and their skin is this and their mannerisms are that, and their voice is like this. And so they've already crystallized the story. So I totally agree. Music and writing is the same way. Keep the story fluid, keep the story open, let the space between the lines be used by the reader to imagine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times I like old, silent films and black and white films with, like, the shadows and the
Yeah.
lighting, and I was, like, watching, like, Orson Welles talk about Citizen Kane, and he said, "I had the pleasure of having this camera guy with him, and we didn't know what we couldn't do." And because we chose to, like, not understand what the rules were, what the canon of filmmaking is, like, why can't I do that? So why shouldn't I just try it? And when you're able to sometimes, like, go outside of a canon of a structured, like, area of art and say, like, maybe I'm not the piano player, maybe I'm the guitar player, but I'm actually gonna approach a piano as a guitar player. And what I do might not be the rule of how you should do it. But when I approach it, I might come up with something new. And that something new might be needed to be heard rather than somebody saying, well, you didn't approach that right. It's like, well, what's right?
That's a perfect metaphor for healing as well. So if you leave a space open for something new coming in your healing, instead of bombard yourself with pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
I have a client who came to me with 14 different meds.
Oh,
And now they're trying to take care of the symptom that the last medication
maybe.
hit.
Yeah.
So they never gave their body this space, this new space to create something new, to create that healing within themselves, to allow that homeostasis, that ability for the body to heal, the ability for the body to listen. It's kind of like you're talking about with musicians. If you're not listening for that space, if you're not listening for that, what is coming in? I think Mozart did this, right?
Mhm.
And Michael Jackson. I was listening on I just saw the movie Michael. Unbelievable. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't
It's
seen it,
oh,
but
it's phenomenal. And he talks about the same thing Mozart did, that he just waits for the space and the song comes in.
yeah, it's
And
like the download from the universe or what
yeah,
the Victorians used to talk about, like the muse. Um,
yeah,
but also I was wondering, like you're talking about the 14 meds, like Americans seem to be, they seem to be like so sick. Like when I was in Japan, I noticed there was a lot of elderly people and they were very active. They were walking everywhere. They were eating a lot of vegetables, eating a lot of fish, and they didn't seem to have all the ailments that I can see back home. And
mhm,
I was there for 2 years and I'm like, wow, why is I don't know, Tokyo is a very walkable city, and most people, they don't drive, they walk, everywhere, and there was a lot of things going on in Tokyo, a lot of dynamics like art and culture and businesses and mysticism and Shintoism and all this stuff, but I just felt very free there compared to when I got back home, I felt very restricted.
wow.
So, I don't know, it just seemed like I felt, like, more healthy when I was in Japan than I was when I come back here
Well,
because
have
some of
you
the
read
things.
the Blue Zone? Have you read about the Blue Zone? So it started as a National Geographic article and
Mhm.
some research, but these blue zones that have that same quality you're talking about in Japan, where the centenarians are making it in a healthy way. I mean, they're really vital. They're able to climb the steps and
Yeah,
get back and forth. They live with their families. They don't get put in a senior citizen's home. They live with their families. They eat vibrantly. They move in a non-intentional ways. They're not going to the gym. They're
yeah,
just heading out on walks and picking strawberries out in the field and doing things that are kind of part of their daily schedule. And but community is really important, and I think that is the case in Japan. Is culture and community are really important there. So
yeah, yeah, 'cause I think we have, like, I don't know, I don't wanna blame cars, but Americans are so into going these long distances in their cars, and then they don't have a sense of community, like, even if you live in a suburb, a
mhm.
lot of times people don't even know each other. You can live in a community of, like, I'm a child of the '70s, everybody knew each other. I was out riding my bike, skateboarding, knew my neighbors, knew all the kids in the neighborhood. But nowadays,
Mhm.
You could be in a neighborhood and nobody knows each other. Nobody talks to each other. Everybody just stays like in their own world. And I'm like, and I noticed in Japan it wasn't like that. Um, so I don't know. It's this disconnectedness that seems to be happening. I don't know if because of modern society, modern tools, and
Well, I think so as a teacher, especially for middle school, the reliance on devices is unbelievable. I mean, I'm like you. I grew up in, a neighborhood where we were all on our bikes, and as soon as we got home from school, we dropped our backpack and we went out to hang out with our friends and had a lot of connection face to face. But now, my brother was telling me he sponsors a bunch of kids that are uh, coming from other countries to have education here through what do you call it when you're foreign exchange.
for exchange tune, yeah.
And he says he has them all over. He's got a pool. He's thinking all these kids that are scattered all over the town and staying in various people's homes are going to want to connect. And they're all sitting there texting each other. They're talking to each other in the same space.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to a club, and I remember going to clubs in the '80s, in the '90s, and these people were all sitting on these couches on their cell phone.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
And I'm like, well, why aren't you on the dance floor? Why aren't you talking? They're not talk. They're on the cell phone. It's like, why are you here if you're going to talk to somebody else? And I guess maybe you're even talking to somebody across the room on your cell phone instead of actually going up to them and talk to them, like you said. And I'm like, that to me is like the reliance on these devices is incredible. Because in my day job, I'm a programmer. I'm a system analyst, and we used to all like be in the same room. And now, like, I deal with a team in Poland, I deal with a team in Germany, I deal with a team in Korea, and we're all online. Now we have these virtual rooms. We've come up with these ideas. We have these virtual rooms that run all day, and we can go into these rooms and we have physically meet in the rooms. Well, virtually meet in the rooms, and we have to have our cameras on because the HR started to realize like if we have our cameras on, we will interact kind of like if we're in the room. But if we have the cameras off, people miss the cues. And they started to realize that they need the cues. And it's kind of like, well, the same cues if you were physically together, that would probably be even better.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you mentioned something else I think is kind of an interesting phenomenon, and that is that we're all in our cars. And think of all the products that we get that are from other parts of the world and how much petroleum is used to ship this stuff from Argentina or China or, South Korea. And so I tried to experiment with this. I thought, well, I'm going to try to eat within foods and things within 100 miles of where I live.
Local as you can.
Oh my gosh, that is so almost impossible.
It's hard.
Unless you go to the farmer's market. We have our farmer's market here in Sedona, Arizona on Sundays. And so if I was really going to do that, I'd have to stock up. And they do have local eggs, local meats, local produce. But even in, it's crazy. And you think about how much gas it takes for those melons from Mexico to land in my produce department. Yeah, oh my God.
We just don't realize what the carbon impact of things are. I got solar panels on my house and I'm using hydroponic gardens. And we've got like local farms all over New Hampshire. We got bison farms, dairy farms, full like, cornfields and vegetable, like greenhouses. So we try to, because I'm a cancer survivor, we try to deal with a lot of the local farms because there's a lot of them. And we find that we know what's going on with these farmers because they'll say they're not using pesticides. They'll say they're not using this, they're not using that. They document what they don't use. And so you're like, you have to really track it down. It costs a lot more money. So I can see most people are like, well, I can't afford that. Because it's like if it's cheaper, then it's probably full of all the stuff you don't want. But that's just the nature of our convenience to make things more affordable, make it more convenient to be able to get something from Argentina or Mexico. You're going to pay the carbon tax. You're going to pay the pesticide tax. You're going to pay all these other taxes that are like really, you don't realize you're paying.
Yeah, and if you're thinking it's going to be more affordable because the farmers in Argentina are working for $5 a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you got to put then all those transportation costs on top of it. I just started my garden for the summer, and I think I'm feeding more rabbits and gophers than I am myself because they seem to be
Yeah,
attracted
they
to
like
what
to
I'm
eat it.
planting.
The bugs find you. I always find it real interesting when I grow stuff that the bug that is designed to eat that plant was never there until I brought the plant there, and then suddenly it shows up. I'm like, "How did he find it?"
Yeah, isn't that true? Isn't
It's like,
that true?
"How does he
Yeah,
know this was never here? How does he know it that I grew this? How does he pick that antenna up and he's here?"
yeah.
Very, very specific bug that likes this specific thing is now here.
It's their intuitive social media, right?
Yeah, they just know. It's like, "Oh, I picked it up on a wind." It's like, I know it's there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, hey, with your cancer, I'm kind of interested. You said that you were a stage 3.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say is your biggest contributor to your healing? Would you say it's mindset? Would you say it was changing a lot of your diet and the things you
Yeah,
ingest?
it's a combination of a bunch of things. I think
Yeah,
I was 27. I didn't realize that I had that kind of mortality. Yeah, that was a big thing. And
yeah,
it was interesting to me because there were people around me that were, my age, and some of them stayed around, and some of them were scared, and they disappeared because they
yeah,
couldn't handle the fact that, oh, you could get something like that under 30. And there are other people I didn't know that would hang around that they were around. And so then that kind of changed my mindset. It's like, oh wow, how do people perceive me? How do I perceive them? And then I felt like the things that I felt that were glass ceilings to me, I said, well, if I survive cancer, then I'm not afraid. That's why I went to Japan. Because I had people around me tell me, oh, you can't do this, can't do that. My mom was full of fear, a lot of fear. And she didn't want me going there. I was like, because I had just survived cancer and she didn't want me leaving. I'm like, I need to go and do things that I thought I couldn't do. And it opened up a lot of things in terms of, looking at, I had been like a Baptist. I got into initial initiation into Buddhism. I started to talk to people maybe I didn't talk to before, started looking into things I didn't do before. And it just opened up a lot of like glass ceilings that I had put on myself that I realized it's like, hey, I only have one life to live for here at this moment. Maybe in the next life I get to do another thing, but I'm going to experience this life as best I can.
Well, that's pretty advanced of you because I think that's the hardest thing for most people is that core beliefs get set really early. So between 0 and 7 is the time in which those core beliefs really crystallize. And it's usually because, I mean, I don't want to blame parents, but it's the parental authority. It's the message you've been given by mom and dad, right? So that, oh, we don't have enough food, eat everything on your plate. There's people in Africa that are starving to death, or even things like protectiveness. I call one archetype the protective bear of the person who's shielding themselves because they've been criticized and told that they're worthless and not
Mhm.
enough. And so they like to pad themselves with layers that they get from food. So there are these different types of core beliefs that you really have to undo. So you're actually really, quite transformed that you were able to look at that so early. It takes people usually about 5 to 7 years to transform a core belief that's sabotaging their lives. And it's beyond food. I mean, I just happen to be a holistic nutritionist, so that's where I start with people. But then it expands into how do you protect yourself from love? How do you protect yourself from relationships? How do you protect yourself with your money? What are you building up in your little bank account there and you're not enjoying yourself with it? So you see all these patterns just keep perpetuating.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's interesting that we have resentments, and I tried to lose my resentments because I felt like there was some toxicity in the microcosm of my family experience because
Mhm,
the way my mom perceived the world, my way my dad perceived the world was
mhm.
somewhat not positive. That it created like a lot of negativity in my environment. I felt that my cancer might have been a result of the negative space I was in because there's a lot of what we can't do, what we can't have, what we shouldn't do. There was all these restrictions, And I just felt like I was like in a cage. And once I get past the cancer, then I'm like, I'm not in there anymore. And
Yeah.
I
And what have you been cancer free 20 or 30 years? I mean, that's pretty
58,
impressive.
58, yeah.
Wow.
And
Well, that's quite a testament. I'm going to have to interview you for my next book. My book is about 20 cancer patients that had major transformational healings. And they weren't always physical. Some people actually passed, but the awareness that they got, and every one of them saying cancer was such a good teacher to me. It was
yeah,
really, yeah. I mean, that's what,
like a lot of times I mean, I don't want to thank the cancer, but what I
yeah.
know is like people that I was like, patients that were in the, at the getting the treatment. And I know some of the folks that made it and are still here and the ones that didn't. And it was kind of like the mindset. It was like it was the treatments plus the mindset plus because some people they like hit the wall and it's like, oh, they thought it was over and
Yeah.
they couldn't get out of it. And nothing was getting them out of it. And other people looked at it like I did, and a couple other people I kind of aligned with were this is an opportunity. And that's like not what we're told to do. We're told like we're victims. We're like in survivor mode. And like I felt like I've been given an opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I tell a story in my book about a patient. I call him Michael, and he just could not get that cancer identity out of his head. He came into our offices and he would try to alter his time when he would have appointments with me so he could meet new cancer patients that were sitting there waiting for the appointment or coming out of an appointment so he could tell them all about his cancer. And he used to always say, my cancer does this. Oh, my cancer. Yeah. And when I got my cancer, I finally had to say to him, you are so identified with your cancer. Could I ask you to do one thing and stop calling it my cancer? That identity is killing you.
Mhm.
So I get it. That's really perceptive of you.
I just think stress is another thing.
Mhm.
I found ways to de-stress. I got into mountain biking. I've been into music since I was like 7. And I felt like music has been like very cathartic for me. I like to put a lot of
Mhm.
like to work out anything that's stressful to me. Like at the end of the day, I'm jump on my keys. I jump on the piano and I'll just put something down just to do it. Just cause I find that I can put like whatever I'm feeling into the music.
Mhm.
And I've talked to painters and other artists that feel the same way. Like art therapy, a lot of artists I've talked to is like art is very cathartic. And when you find a way to put something into that space, but then you also need I can't be in the house all day. So I go out into the Merrimack Valley, river trail and ride out, across the river, on this mountain bike trail. And just being like the restorative power, like nature. Like I think the Victorians say, nature is the cathedral. It's very restorative. You take your socks off and you put your feet on soil. It feels like you're getting like energy from Gaia. There's something about that too, that if you find balance in life, that you don't push it like, I know a musician, someone will sit there for hours and then they'll get carpal tunnel. They'll kind of they'll overdo it. And I'm like, you
Yeah.
have to kind of know when to let go.
You do. You can imagine here in Sedona too, very beautiful area here. So the red rocks are just spectacular, and the energy here is really very vital and regenerative. So there's an aspect to that grounding of connecting with the earth and connecting with the nature around you. And it's surprisingly, for a desert area, it's surprisingly green. So we do a lot of sessions outdoors, but I know what you're saying, that you get stuck inside. Music is an amazing healer. I mean, I will say that music is spectacular, but you can take it outside. We have drumming
Yeah.
circles outside
Take
here.
an acoustic instrument, go outside. Yeah.
Yeah, Native American flute sessions out of the Red Rocks. So
Yeah.
that could be taken outdoors. Just got to get your little acoustic instrument with you. Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
like between being addicted to being sick,
Yeah.
that concept, because I think a lot of folks, they get like hung up, like you say, the 14 meds, and there's
Yep.
one to kind of deal with the side effects of the other one, well, the next one. And people looking at, all these medicines instead of like, why do I need that to resolve it? Can't I find other ways? No.
Well, in the Course in Miracles, which I cite in my book a lot, which kind of a spiritual philosophy, it labels those things as idols. So if you're going to believe the idol, if you're going to put all your faith in this magic bullet instead of faith in source, that is how addictions happen. And it's listening to the ego voice, listening to the voices. Oh yeah, you could do this. Why not? Sure, you'll be fine. I've got your back. And then it's that quiet, peaceful moment where you can just take in what you really need. So you also have to remember that medical schools are funded primarily by pharmaceutical companies. There's a profiteering going on in the Western medicine community. And so they don't necessarily have an answer for you other than a prescription.
Yeah.
So Joe Dispenza kind of talks about that a lot in his work that he does, is that healing space is dropping all the little peripheral connections and addictions to the stuff outside of yourself, even blaming other people, and letting that go, and then listen to source, listen to that creative energy. You talk about music. I think that when we're looking at what really heals, it is that creative part. It's the creative source. It's really expanding on who we are from the heart chakra aspect. And then you can let that in. So you could either go, deep into the carnal, you could go up into the heady and the intellectual, but the healing's here.
In the heart.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems, so many folks in this age of like AI, I kind of get worried with young people, because I see these people saying like, and I'm really into the arts. My daughter's a graphic artist. My wife is a writer, and I'm a musician, and I do software design. I find that creative as well. But the idea that you're going to use this like GPU, this computer,
Yeah.
right, instead of like going to the library, like you doing the Dewey Decimal System. Like I had to go, if I wanted to research, I couldn't go on Google, couldn't go on ChatGPT. I had to go to the library. I had to understand Dewey Decimal. I had to go look it up. I had to actually read it, write it, put it in a note, understand it. And now if we use all these tools, I see it even at work, is that people don't have like the critical thinking. They don't, they have a very short like attention span. If something takes too long, they can't put the time in, and they don't ask like really probing questions. They seem to be very superficial. And so we find a lot of problems like where we have to pull like people who have that kind of critical thinking or had the Socratic method, where they weren't just looking for a multiple choice. They actually tell me what this means in your own words, right? Instead of going and finding it off the net, tell me what you think it is. And even if it's wrong, let's have a discussion. But like, where's that? We're losing some capacity because we're relying on these machines.
Well, I'd say this is a big transformational time. The next 10 years, some people say the next 2 years, right? But the next 10 years are going to be quite transformational. What's going to happen if really 90% of the jobs are going to be eliminated? I mean, that's what some of the estimates are. 90% of the jobs. So then what do you do with that time? If you're an individual that no longer has the ability to fill your day with your work, what are you going to do? It might be a creative thing. What are the jobs? They say the things that are going to stay, the jobs that are going to stay are the things that we prefer to have a human do it. So we might be happy with having a computer diagnose our illness, but when it comes to the surgery, we want a human there.
Yeah, human to do it.
or music. You know, we may have AI write songs, which is what's going on now. I mean, unbelievable. Songwriters might be eliminated, but to perform those songs, we want to see those humans up there playing that guitar and playing that piano, you know, those kinds of things. They're not going to be eliminated. You want to see a human doing it. So we'll see what happens. This is a scary time. I feel badly for the youth. I think this is something that will affect youth probably much more than, you know, people over the age of 55. However, we'll see what happens. I think maybe that's why we're seeing the violence and the discord is use their own. They're so unhappy with what's going on. They don't feel like they have a place. They don't feel that there's a future. So these are all things that cause illness.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a misunderstanding of what AI actually is, because I'm a techie. But
What do you think it is?
well, AI is a learning library. It's a language system, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is a predictive model. It has no understanding of what it's actually giving you back. It is predicting what the response will be without understanding anything about it. That is not something you want to pin the future on, right? If you still need human beings to discern what something is. A lot of these models give you totally incorrect information, but it looks plausible,
Mm-hmm.
right? They give you a lot what they call hallucinations. They don't have the depth of what it really means. It's all predictive. It seems on its surface that it's giving you the right answer, but it's not. Human beings still need to be there. We're the best computer that's ever been built. These things are not sentient. They don't have discernment. And so if people rely on them too much, you're going to end up with a lot of catastrophic situations where these models cannot handle what we call in computer science the happy accident or the unhappy path. There's like an 80-20 rule. The 80% maybe it can handle, but the 20% where it's not predictable, they can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where a lot of critical things in our society work, or in the 20%, the 90-10 to 10%. If you make everything rely on this technology, you're going to create a lot of problems.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we have to get back to the point where we remember what humanity is, right? Got to remind ourselves that human beings have a soul. We've got a heart. We've got compassion. These computers don't have that. So yeah, really reminding ourselves. And if you think that you don't have those capacities of compassion and empathy and some of these human qualities, that's a big wake up call for people. It will create an underlying block in your system.
It's not all STEM. I mean, there's a reason why there's the humanities. Right?
Yeah,
There's a reason.
exactly.
I was a sociology, political science major, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in sociology, I took a lot of philosophy. You know, Sartre, Camus. You read Herman Melville, you read Moby Dick. It's not about the whale, right? Like the kids today, did you actually understand Moby Dick? Did you read it? Did you read Pride and Prejudice? Did you just read the Cliff Notes?
Mm-hmm.
Problem I have is like, if people don't understand like the depth of some of these old novels, the depth of, say, Shakespeare or the Odyssey or anything that's really deep, and they only want to get the Cliff Note answer to pass the test, the multiple choice test, you're doing yourself a disfavor. You're thinking that STEM is the only thing is incorrect.
Well, and it changes all the time.
Yeah.
You know, science changes all the time. You think about Galileo and how he kind of broke the mold in the European model of whether the sun was the
center,
was going around the earth, right? That it was a Eurocentric. It was
Earth-centric. Everything was going around the Earth instead of everything.
You know that they just within the last 20 years finally acknowledged, the Catholic Church finally acknowledged that Galileo was right about the sun being the center of our. I mean, there's so many things that we just grab onto, and the thing that worries me most, I think, about the AI is that if they're going to try and connect it to the human brain, if they're going to plug you in like Matrix.
Well, I mean, the Android is the whole like science fiction story of the Android is like you plug in so you have access to that data in the human brain. So
Yeah.
suddenly you access that database the way the ChatGPT accesses that database.
Yeah.
And you get immediate knowledge. You get immediate, like you could just, you would hear a human language, any language you would just understand. It was automatic translation. I mean, there's cool things that could happen, but there's actually bad things that could happen.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so like for every good use case, there's a lot of other cases, you know.
Right.
So we look at it like what we call the edge cases. You know, the edge cases can be problematic. Everybody
Mhm.
looks at the happy path. It's the unhappy path. It's the edge case that are problematic. That things like there's no panacea, and people are gonna have to make the hard call because at the end of the day, you know, the part of the whole enlightenment was there's a sense of, in the enlightenment you had to understand, like, you know, you could be Galileo, you could be, you know, that level, but you had to understand like poetry, you had to understand philosophy, you understood
Mhm.
like other text, right? Not just the science. You
Mhm.
connected it to other things. It's not just like a narrow channel. Like you have to be more holistic, more expansive.
Right.
If people get so narrow, I think they're missing the big picture.
Mhm. Yeah, and even in my area of expertise in holistic medicine, I think people can get really stuck on a singular answer. So you're right about seeing things from a much broader perspective. It's not always about that I find the right herb or I find the right vitamin supplement or I get the right acupuncturist. It's really about doing your own inner work and really looking at, as you said before, looking at mindset. What is the mindset? What is your belief system? How is your belief system really hindering you? How is it blocking you from being able to make progress in your life? Why are you so unhappy? That would be the first indicator. If you aren't happy, then there's definitely a block in your healing. So yeah, I think that big perspective is what's necessary in healing today.
Yeah, because it's so interesting today that people are so not happy about individual outside of my experience. That other is hindering me. There's this idea, there's this resentment. The, oh, this group actually is hindering my movement. That what this person believes, if they believe that actually stops me. How does that
Mhm.
stop me? Right? The whole understanding is that you have to have everything fit like your whole paradigm. If something is outside of your paradigm, you have to crush it. It's like you can't allow it to exist. I'm like, why? Where did that happen? Why is that happening? Because
Yeah, or change it, right? So it's not even about crushing it. It's about, I feel I have to change this person's mind. People
yeah,
put so much effort into arguments and trying to
the whole
alter
point of
this.
like, yeah, I mean, when I was in school, we had arguments. Like we actually had like debates. We had rules. I went to
Mhm.
both, and you know, you had to come with your facts. You had to come with your opinion, but you're not supposed to attack somebody for their facts or their opinion or what they believe. You had to make your argument, and it wasn't about trying to destroy the other person. It was basically make your argument and then see if you can be convincing or not. But it's not to like prove that you're the only way. That's not the point of the debate. And
Mhm.
some people today, they think a debate is to prove that this is the only way.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, where did that's not a debate. Like, have people tell you the rules of debate? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, persuasion, not annihilation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's like that's not the point. Is to just eliminate all this, all. It's like the Borg, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
Resistance
Absolutely.
is futile. You know, I'm like a Gene Roddenberry guy, but like a science fiction was always interesting to me. You know, I always liked it, like because sometimes in science fiction, people could take on things that are not socially like one you don't want to talk about, like Gene Roddenberry, Rod Serling, like
Mhm.
all these great science fiction writers, you know, Swiftly Tilden Plan. Like a lot of science fiction actually takes on current events, but it's masked in this like fantasy world.
Mhm.
and people could actually talk about something very serious, and then it wasn't threatening because it was on Star Trek. It wasn't threatening because, oh, that's a different world,
Mhm.
but it's actually talking about this world.
Yeah, and that's actually the great thing about science fiction is you can um, neutralize identities. You could read about someone who looks completely different than a human, right? Something with scales that has intelligence, but it's purple, and or something that flies in a ship that is beyond gravity. Or you can postulate these possibilities, and then you can use them as metaphors in your own life and transform your own identity of yourself. You can move into that science fiction type identity, but that seems to be a big one. The ego tells you you are this.
Mhm.
You are this identity. You are a school teacher. You are female. You are, handicapped. You are whatever that identity is that you have, that you believe, and the ego wants you to believe. And really, if you can open yourself up to that metaphor of science fiction and realize that you have this divine capability of being anything you want to be,
Yeah.
crush
It
the identity, right?
But identity is so restrictive because
Yes.
everybody doesn't have to be what, you were taught in your home, like in the
Mhm.
microcosm of your home or your neighborhood, your town, you are X. But
Yeah.
you are whoever you are in the looking glass, and the, looking glass self is, dive deep down. It's like, is that really you or is this somebody else?
Hmm.
Right? And that was kinda like the looking glass self idea and the Victorians would get into, and I always kinda go back to them because they used to have all this coded language to try to get to the truth, but then they were
Hmm.
still hiding it through all these
Right.
layers. But, because they were scared about what if they actually said it directly. Um, but it's interesting about, the idea of forgiveness as medicine. I was looking at
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
because you have to kinda forgive yourself before
you
you
do. And
can
I come up
other
with a
people.
little different definition of forgiveness. So instead of the holier than thou perspective, which is, oh, you may have done this terrible thing to me, but I'm going to be a big person and I'm just going to forgive you. It's looking at what you're talking about here, the mirror of it. I am you and you are me. And what you've done, I've probably done in a different way. And so I'm going to give up the perception that you're wrong. I'm going to give up the perception that you did something to me.
Mhm.
That to me is the true forgiveness. You didn't mean to do it to me. You were merely either trying to call for love or extend love. And if you did something that I momentarily perceived as a wrong against me, then it was probably just a opportunity to ask for love. How could we turn this around and see it in a different way? So that to me is true forgiveness, and it all comes back to you. It's forgiving the guilt you feel over whatever it is, right?
Yeah, that's always kinda like the filter, like, when we you always have to try to slow down conversations sometimes because
Yeah.
people, as soon as they hear something, the mind filters things into what we wanna feel we can kinda digest. So we have these filters, as soon as we hear some key word, the mind puts it into this, "Oh, this goes down this path." So
Hmm.
this thing, once somebody says that thing that triggers you to go to the path, you don't even hear, well, anything else they're saying. You
Yeah.
already kinda made a judgment, and then the thing is, if you get more evolved, you go and you slow down the conversation instead of reacting, you say, "What did you really mean to say? Or
There
what is
you
it
go.
that you said?" Instead of going and reacting into, "You've done me harm. You've
Exactly.
offended me. You've done this to me. You've done X." It's like, "Oh, did you really mean that? What are you trying to say?"
Hmm.
Which a lot of people won't do that.
No, that's the ego telling you you're right. Right? Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? you know, you can take being right to the grave, and you can destroy all the relationships around you doing it. So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, good point. So Forgiveness is the true medicine. It is the medicine of the heart. That is what's ultimately going to heal. And as I said before, healing isn't necessarily physical. If you don't believe you are your body, you have the opportunity to let your mind transform you. And forgiveness is a great way to do it, because then you can change the perception of whatever you thought was harming you, right? I had to sub for a class, substitute for an 8th grade class the other day. And they were studying the Native American catastrophes, and looking at, the Andrew Jackson policies on the Native Americans. And I was kind of shocked that the kids were all feeling all of this major guilt, oh my gosh, our country's so bad. We were so bad, blah, 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 blah. And so I really tried to turn it around. I said, you know what? I'd really like you to look at this a different way. How does this story of what happened during Custer's last stand, how does this story relate to you? What's going on in your current life right now where the story, instead of getting stuck on the past, blaming yourself for something that happened 100 years ago, how can you take that story internally now and see, where have I abused someone? When we look at slavery, how are you a slave? Where do you feel like you're imprisoned or you're chained? How can you transform that? Look at all the people who've done it. Look at all the people who transformed it. So really bringing it back to your own story. I think that's
the problem with guilt, because guilt can be dangerous, because like if being Native American, African American, the problem we sometimes see is when we tell our story, it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they get uncomfortable and they start feeling guilty. And when they get guilty, then they actually start acting in ways that could be adverse to us having a positive conversation. So instead of going down that road, it's going down the road you're saying is like to understand it, to look at like what's going on in your life today, like at a microcosm level.
Exactly. Why are you feeling guilt? Is there something in your life you feel guilty about that you need to heal?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
People don't look at that looking glass self. It's like look in the mirror and look at like why am I unhappy? Am I moving from town to town? And the common denominator is I'm unhappy, but I'm going to a different town. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's not the town.
Right? Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah. So it's not the people in the neighborhood, because every neighborhood I go to, I don't feel good. So like, what is it that's going on? It's like, that is a hard thing to do, because no one wants to go and look at the red marked paper of their life. Because then they start feeling bad. It's like, well, I can't get this right. I can't get this straight. So maybe you can go and try to, incrementally get better. The problem, I think people try to go 0 to 100, and it's highly likely you're not going to do that well. But like any musician or any athlete that practices, to get your 10,000 hours, nobody probably wanted to hear me playing my saxophone in the first hour. By the time I get to hour 9,000, you probably want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But nobody needs to know. Like you have to kind of do the work. If you don't do the work, then you're going to be stuck at that first hour and you're going to drop it. And it's like, well, I can't play.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a brief story about guilt, because, so many things can block you from achieving what you want to achieve, whether it be playing a saxophone or, running a company or having a successful marriage or raising your kids. So many different things can block that. But you mentioned that guilt can be dangerous. I would say guilt is dangerous. Guilt is dangerous. And this one man who came to see me, he had prostate cancer, very advanced, stage 4. It had already metastasized to some of his organs. And he tried everything. He tried chemo, he tried surgery. He just couldn't beat this. And he figured food was going to change this for him. But what we uncovered was that a couple decades earlier, he had killed some women and children in the Vietnam War in a village.
Oh, he had that on his.
And he never told anyone about it, other than his commanding officer. The only person that knew about it was him. His wife didn't even know about it. He'd been married, for 25, 30 years. So when he uncovered that and he cried, oh gosh, it really affected him. He really transformed amazingly in that amount of time. But what he did with it is he ended up going home and working in the orphanage industry and raising money for orphanages and helping to place children, especially teens. He ended up going and speaking at veterans groups and letting them know his story. And he beat his prostate cancer. And it was from finally opening up and getting rid of that guilt, finally using it as a tool to help transform others. Transform yourself first, look in that mirror first, and then help transform others, help them see that there's nothing to feel guilty over.
It's like a poison. I mean, like if you have that poisonous like negativity and you don't actually excise it by discussing it, you just lock it away, it becomes like the cancer. It
does.
I think a lot of indigenous people believe, like, in a lot of cultures I've seen, is like the understanding of your illness is because of like the bad intentions. Like if you have this kind of darkness in your spirit or soul and you don't excise it, you don't do something about it, it takes over the pillars of your system. It creeps into it. It creeps into your cells and then turns them into cancer cells.
Yeah, first you have to be aware enough, right?
Yeah, you have
to be aware enough you're even feeling it. Most people just are angry or frustrated and they don't really take it back and recognize, boy, I got to own this. This is me. This isn't the world projecting itself on me. This is me projecting my thoughts and feelings onto the world. So yeah, coming up with that awareness is such a huge step. A lot of people can't do it.
Well, it's hard because we're kind of told like really young that we've got to push that down.
Yeah.
That we can't talk about things. You have your parents or your grandparents, where people tell you like, well, that's not appropriate. You can't say it. You can't talk about it. Where's it go? Like it has to go somewhere.
Stuffed it. It's stuffed inside.
Yeah. It's like, it's not easy. Like there's an unease about dealing with the things that are uncomfortable. And it goes from the microcosm to the macrocosm to the microcosm. Because I was a sociology major, and I'm always talking that way. But like, if you don't deal with that metastasization of those dark things, it feeds both ways. It causes a lot of social ills, like in your own individual life, and then compounding once you get into social groups. People seem to have like vibrations find each other. The law of attraction. The negativity breeds negativity, positivity breeds positivity. You kind of go where you're going to go.
Yeah. We just did an exercise in our support group a couple nights ago, and it was really hard for people. And the question everybody had to answer, and we paired up. So you would talk to, some of these people don't know each other very well. And the question was, what is one of the most embarrassing things that has happened to you that you haven't told many people about? And here you are, talking to a complete stranger and really having to look deep. Some people could go deep. Some people couldn't. Some people was like, oh gosh, that I crashed on my mountain bike and, the backcountry and I, didn't tell my wife or something. But some people went deep, that I had an abortion or, that I cheated on my wife and she doesn't know it. I mean, some people went deep. But yeah, that's a tough question to really look at that.
Yeah, I think it's just like people have to know where they are.
Yeah.
It's kind of, everybody has their own journey. You can't not everybody's gonna, do that in the time frame that maybe the expectation is, because everybody's different. Each person.
Yeah, and some people have done this exercise a lot, so they're ready to get to the deeper ones. Yeah. And some people are there for the first time, so they go light. Oh, that I ate a chocolate bar and threw the wrapper away so my kids didn't see that I was eating it. Some people, that's enough. That's enough for the first time. Right?
First time, yeah. You just ease into it. Like at the end of 0 to 100, you don't have to go. Like some people, this may be extremes. Like so, you tell them something, they go like right. They're really open.
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
point, like, if you're so open, it's like, are you protecting yourself? To a
Yeah.
certain degree, you have to protect your ego a little bit. So that, are you too open, or are you not open, or you like, there's degrees of everything.
Yeah, there's degrees of everything. And when you start out that way, even the chocolate bar incident is a healing.
Mm,
Even that opens a door a little bit so that you can keep doing the work, because this isn't a one-off. This isn't a one and done.
mhm.
Healing is a long-term process. It's the rest of your life.
Yeah. People always want something to end, right? They think it's like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this 10 steps, and at the 10th step, I'm done." Like,
Yeah.
you gotta do that for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
But, we had hit that the 1 hour mark. It always happens quicker than we ever imagined,
I
but,
know it.
um, we do have your QR code. It's been up. I want people to, scan that. If they scan your QR code to go to sedonasolutions.com, what do they find there?
That's my website. They can go on there and read about my book. There's a book section. It takes more than carrot juice. That's the 20 journeys of the cancer patients that I highlighted in that book about their healing process. There's the information about our workshops. And pretty soon, the next little program and workshop that I'm working on, this eating archetype blueprint, will be up there too. And people are always able to have a 15-minute free consultation with me. So if they're interested in talking more about their health and their food and their healing and transformation, you can take 15 minutes and it doesn't cost you anything. So my name's Ellyn Hilliard-McLeod, and it was a pleasure to have a conversation with you, sir. You've got some good insights.
Thank you for being here on a Saturday afternoon, and, we do have, your Instagram below, as well as the same link that's on the QR code. Those will be fully active. We've been on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. We'll be on a lot of other platforms. And we'll create a landing page for everybody to check that out again. I want to thank you for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast on a Saturday afternoon, but thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.